This is Jeremiah with New Covenant. We greet you in the only name given. Let's get back into Romans here with some of the main topics of Romans. I'm gonna play chapter 8 here in a moment. I'll probably play. We'll listen to 9 later on. As we're just about halfway done with Romans, and that's beautiful. We're going to wrap this up, and we're going to Corinthians, and we're going to finish Matthew next week and get started on that. For those of you interested, and we're going to try to go right through Mark. And having done that, we will be on schedule to do a very good job this year on Bible study, okay? I think we got the first 2 chapters of the book of Acts. I'll probably go back over the 2nd chapter again. It's very important. When the Holy Spirit comes down, the Father comes down and with his presence to those in the upper room. We'll probably go over that chapter again. We have some other, of course, we have Psalms and Proverbs. We got started here. I got a list of what we've done there. And Isaiah is also ready to go. Isaiah doesn't really become significant until chapter 2. Because chapter 1 of Isaiah is punishment for the people who don't want to behave properly. Okay, or the bad city, or the city that went bad. A good title would be The City That Fell. That's a good title for it. But chapter 2 gets significant because you get thrust into Isaiah prophecy based upon what? Probably, I would say that would be the millennium rule of Jesus Christ, Revelation chapter 19-20. Let's get back to what we're dealing with right here with the baby infidel. I have some notes. I'm going to leave those notes because we're going to move on. I'm just making a lot of main points this year on Romans and so forth. Next year, I'm going to build an entire schemata for this book. I'm going to sequence all of Paul's writings next year. It's going to take me about 3 to 4 months. That's a big job next year. That's how important Romans is. Let me tell you another reason why Romans is important. And I might add Corinthians a little too. The reason why Romans is so important is because it's Paul's first teaching letter, number 1. Number 2, in this letter, he's taking a lot of the basics of Christianity and he's explaining them in detail that the master just went over briefly. It doesn't mean you can't get the entire concept from the master. That is not the point. The point is he gives you additional information about the subjects of Christ's sound doctrine. He expands them, or the word might be expound. Explique. That's what he does, okay? That's why God chose him, so that he could further clarify the commandments and teachings of Jesus Christ. Everything always goes back to the master. He said, take up your cross and follow me 6 times. Paul's not going to tell you to take up your cross and follow him because he's not the master. He's going to tell you to take up your cross and follow Jesus. But the master, who is the master, told you to take up your cross. Directly from the horse's mouth, as they say. Obviously, the master is not a horse, okay? The point is that that's a weak metaphor, maybe, or something like that. But no, you're hearing it from the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, exactly what to do. Paul comes along, he says it again in different words, or he will support what the master already said. That's what Paul does. Jesus said, whom the Son has set free is free indeed. So here comes Paul telling you how you're free from any kind of Sabbath day. You don't have to tell anybody how much money you give to the church. Paul never mentions how much money he ever received or how much he gave. Never, not one time. John never identified how much money he gave or received. Peter never said how much money he gave or received. Jude never said how much money he gave or received. They always mention it as love gifts and leave it alone. It's not your business. Jesus said, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. What does America do? TV guys, they tell you how much they got in return and all this kind of, it was an investment from God, and God owes me 30.5%, and that's why it's called an apostasy right now, because the people are basically absolutely confused, liars, prevaricators, twister donuts, and basically worthless people. That's what they are. Liars and people who are confused are not going to do you any good. If you have a man come over your house to fix your house, he doesn't know what he's doing, he's no good for you. For you to have him walk into your house, say hello to him, and befriend him, makes you a bozo. To put it in American straight terminology. That's what you are. Because you got to check people before they wreck you. That's the point. If a man comes on TV and tells you that it's okay to be rich and greedy, and you say, I like him, then whose fault is that? That's your fault. And you will pay for that. I just went through Isaiah, where is it? In the Old Testament, where God mentions people who support people. You're basically in the same shoes as the people you support. That's why the Bible says, flee Babylon. Get yourself out of there before you end up paying for a lot of the things that the people you support are going to experience. It's very unfortunate, but it's reality. It's like watching the movie The Sinking of the Bismarck, where these young Germans are trying to do the best they can to be devoted Germans to their country. But all they're doing is supporting a mass murderer, and they get blown up. It's sad. Because a lot of German soldiers, when they heard Hitler say that we're barbarians and we like to terrorize people, a lot of those people did not want to do that. But since it's your country, what are you going to do? It's very difficult for you to pack up and leave and so forth. And furthermore, you would be considered a deserter and you might not be able to leave. Let's talk about deserting for one moment. Do you know that that's a very difficult situation when it comes to people who are minions? You know, it's very difficult for you to fight the system. You know, you're almost basically locked in. You know, what I mean, what if you're Italian? During the Yugoslavian campaign, they had the Battle of Neretva. I think that was 1943. The people of Yugoslavia who were walking up and down the street, all of a sudden, they found the Germans machine gunning and bombing their homes at will, just like the Blitz in London. And so they're getting shot up. They don't know what to do. They're not prepared. They don't know how to shoot guns. They don't have that many guns. They don't have gear to climb through the mountains, which is what they're going to need in about a couple of days. They're going to have to flee the city because they just keep indiscriminately bombing babies and everything, these Germans. And they're satanic. That's what they are. And that's why they have a skull on their helmets and stuff. Okay, they're telling you that they support what Adolf Hitler said, that we're barbarians. Now, there are a lot of Germans who didn't want to be barbarians. But what do you do if everybody around you says, I want to be a barbarian? Get in the airplane and shoot down innocent people. If you say no, you're probably dead. That goes for Japan especially, or Japan also, by the way. What do you do under these circumstances? It's very difficult. Let me give you an example of bucking the tide of what's popular, and that has a lot to do with Christianity. Because a lot of people do these things like bother people about the Sabbath day or what you eat, which is what Paul is talking about here. What you eat, when you eat it, and what it is, and what day you should go to church based upon what God told Moses to tell the people of Israel to keep the Sabbath day. It's an everlasting Sabbath day you keep, and all of this. What do you do if your whole family believes in all of this? You know, that you must do good to get good. And we have the law here, and we teach the law, and that's what makes us good with God. when that's not what makes you good with God. The Torah people have made a great mistake. Because in the middle of the Torah it says, God will have mercy on thousands who fear him. So, what's the simple logic? The simple logic is, you can't obey the Ten Commandments. You should see that you can't be perfect, and that you better bank on, as they say in America, on the middle of the Ten Commandments, which says, I have mercy on thousands, and that's supposed to be your ticket out of here. Which is what Mary said when the angel came to her, that God is mercying us again. Smart lady. She's not relying on the law. And you can tell she's not throwing the law away either. No way. But let's get back to this situation of being a minion. Because I'm not going to go to that scripture right now. It's a very beautiful scripture where the Lord talks about people who are minions, how you're going to be responsible for doing what you're told to do, even though it may seem right, you're doing it for your country kind of thing. Sometimes you need to confront your country because they may be doing the wrong thing. And you can get saved by opening up your mind, which what I have right here is live with an open mind to God's will. It can save you. Some of you I'm talking to, I might be talking to people under Sharia law. You need to confront your Muslim friends or whatever and tell them that I don't believe in murder and I don't believe that you should attack or deceive anybody. Such as the book that I used to read tells me to do. I don't have anything to do with that. I like this new teachings of Jesus Christ in Matthew chapter 5 that says love everybody and love your enemies. I've decided to follow this ideology. And I don't care what you do with me. I don't care what you do. Do what you got to do. I'm going to confess Jesus Christ as my Lord and Master. And I want to follow him. And I don't want to follow you guys. Simple, plain, straightforward. And that can save a Muslim person's soul. Or a drug cartel member. Or a gang member here in Chicago. Or a politician who seem to be obviously getting worse and worse. They just voted 60% to keep the war going and to possibly send nuclear bombs to Democrats. 50% of the Republicans said keep going, and 60% or so of the Democrats said keep going. And 50% say a nuclear war is fine with me, that you voted into office, and 60% of the Democrats said we're behind it too. Just go send some nukes. We don't care if 2 billion people die in 2 days. It might stop the war. You think I'm kidding you? You think I'm jiving around? I don't tell you stuff that I don't research thoroughly. If I was in Congress right now, I'd ask to get out of there. I'd do something. I wouldn't want to participate with those deeds. You think I want to participate with those deeds? 40 years ago, America said that the Ukraine is the worst country in Europe. They're the most corrupt, dirtiest human rights group of people that have ever lived in the history of Europe almost. And they had a long list, as thick as a Bible, of the offenses that they've done against the people over the past couple of years. So Congress said, we don't want no dealing with Ukraine. So all of a sudden now, Ukraine is a pure place. Defend them, show us the bombs blowing up on their house. No one asked the question, maybe they asked for it. And they did. There was a peace accord to leave the southern Ukrainians alone, eastern Ukrainians alone. They made a Minsk accord, and that was to leave the Russians in Ukraine alone. What did they do? Zelensky, when he got in office, he started bombing the Russians who were only a couple hundred yards from where he lives. Because there's a big Russian section of Ukraine that's Russians. They're not Ukrainian. So Zelensky went into office saying, I'm going to be friends with everybody. As soon as he got into office, he joined with this Biden character and these other people, and they started bombing the Russians who were friends of the Russians. So the Russians got mad because what are you doing? He said, "Well, don't tell us what to do. Well, you made an accord with us. Oh, leave us alone, you dirty rat." So they start putting film cameras on what the Russians do to try to protect the Minsk people. It gets very complicated. I'm not going to go into politics. I'm just telling you that sometimes you find yourself in a minion position that you can't do anything about it. That's the point. You know, let me share another quick story with you. Just a quick war story. I like war stories and heroism and all of this because I'm somewhat of a historian, not much. And let me tell you a quick story. We'll get back to Paul and the people who don't know how to act here, who are just going around condemning people. You know, well, what are you eating? You know, let that go for a moment here. We're not boo-hooing the Bible, of course. Sometimes you find yourself in a position you don't know what to do. There are two famous Italians in World War II who said that they were fooled in supporting Hitler. They found out that the people they were supporting were devils, and both of them died turning on their commitment that Mussolini had obligated them to. Both of them died. Both of them died by Germans, but before they died, they made a statement that they were very, very upset with themselves for allowing themselves to bomb innocent children who were minding their own business. And they realized what they were doing, and they said, "What the heck am I doing?" And let me tell you about one of these famous guys. Or it's not necessarily famous, but he's pretty well known. And that was during the Battle of Neretva. Here's what happened I'll tell you real quick what happened to the Yugoslavians. All of a sudden, you're at home and then bombs start going over your house and blowing you up and you don't know what to do. Okay? The machine gun fire is killing everybody in the streets in front of your house, in front of your business. But what do? You don't know what to do. So all of a sudden, we have a wonderful leader, by the way, a couple of leaders who took over and became the People's Army's general. And this guy was actually a very brilliant guy. I forgot his name. But he was a very brilliant guy because he outsmarted 3 armies that were 5 times as big as he was. Trained soldiers with untrained women, without gear, without being able to clean their guns, and he still won the battle, and he won the day. Yugoslavia remained independent of all of the people who wanted to take over the cities. Okay? So let me get a quick story, because I don't do this very often, but I want to mention being a minion for a minute. Some of you out there are minions. Some of you are Muslim minions, drug cartel minions. The child kidnapping is a big thing in the world. It's always been a big thing, though, off and on, I guess. I don't know, but it's absolutely horrible. And of course, now they're saying it's much more bigger than we thought. There's a new movie about it out right now, but here's my point. My point is that if you're involved in something out there, you can get out of it. You don't have to be a minion and go along with the program, okay? Part of my ministry is reaching people who are stuck in some sort of minion position. All Bible teachers have that, but I think that mine might lean a little bit more towards reaching people that few people are reached through this computer medium here, okay? Let me mention what happened to this gentleman, and we'll get back to the germane Bible lesson. He was walking along the road with his buddy. They had just attacked a lot of innocent people. Remember, there are 3 armies attacking the people right now of Yugoslavia. The people are minding their own business, like going to work, and they're trying to get united now because they're going to have to get united. They're going to have to unite, rather. Otherwise, they're going to be toast. They're going to have to get all the guns they can, and whatever they can, because if they don't, they're going to be wiped out. It's quite obvious. So they have three armies are attacking them. For some reason, Mussolini decides to help Hitler, for no reason whatsoever, to help bomb innocent people. So Mussolini sends a bunch of Italians. So after attacking the innocent people, and they withdrew, because the people just fought harder than they did. That's their territory. The Italians are obviously half-hearted. Half of them are saying, "Why are we bothering these people?" So what happens is they're in a retreat. So one of the captains, he stops on the road in the retreat and says, "I'm going back." And his buddy says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm going back to help the people." He goes, "What do you mean?" He goes, we're hurting. We're on the wrong side. So he goes to the city and he goes, "Hey, I want to join you guys." And so they have a little conference and they said, "You can join us." So they trusted him. This guy was an expert on cannon fire. So he became one of the big reasons why they were able to withstand a 5-to-1 ratio. They were outnumbered like 5-to-1. But because of his expertise on how to cool cannons off, and he had those people working. Women who don't have proper gear on for war or shoes in the snow, they're putting wet towels on the cannons after each shot. These are people who don't know what they're doing, but they're doing a darn good job of defending their country because they're outnumbered 5-to-1. Early on in this attack on Yugoslavia, the Italians decided to basically get out, from what I gather. They said, "Enough of this. What do you have us over here for?" But one of these captains who's Italian, he starts being convicted about what he's doing. So they say, "Okay, you can join us." So he dies while they're trying to fight off 5-to-1 Germans. It was a close fight. They almost lost. Some people say there were miracles going on from God. Very interesting stuff about this story. People who were sick and dying all of a sudden jumped up and they were healthy or something. It sounds weird. I'm not saying that that's true, but God can do anything. And these people were definitely minding their own business, trying to hold their own country. So here's what happened. The Germans had to stop. Hitler's upset, whatever, because they're 5-to-1. You should win, but it just couldn't advance all the way through the front of their lines. So here's what happens. The man who's in charge, I forgot his name. There's two guys in charge of the People's Army. All they're doing is trying to defend their land. They had to leave the city and go into the mountains, a lot of them, and hide, and they don't have proper clothing. There's snow. There's no food. They're sick. This is an amazing story. I don't want to give too many stories, but I want to talk about minions for a couple of minutes, boots on the ground. That you don't have to be a minion. You can break the mold. That's my point here. Okay? I'm making a point with some of you out there. Some of you need to listen to this. Maybe your parents were losers, and you think you should go ahead and be a loser or something. You can be whatever you want to be in Christ. You don't have to, you can break the mold. I didn't do well in school. Well, who told you that you have to stay not well in school? The devil told you that. God has the ability to change your mind, especially if you're not lazy. But this gentleman took over the cannon cavalry. They withstood a 5-to-1, well-trained, much more advanced technology. They held them off. Absolutely amazing. Then, as if the people didn't have enough problems, the army of the government turned on them. And this is amazing. In other words, the Yugoslavian army turned on the people's army, shooting their own relatives and stuff. This is how bad people can go. Some of the people that the people's army are shooting are like relatives and stuff. I had that happen to me in my town when I turned 18. Was the first time we saw gang members in a middle-class black community, basically. It was the first time we saw any gang stuff, and they attacked us in the park. And I looked at the faces of the people who had just been converted to gangism, and they were some of my friends who we knew for years. They were ready to jump on us and possibly murder us. I'm giving a lesson on minions right now. I don't get too personal about anything. I'm just telling you that reality is stranger than fiction, and that these people, that man died at that one battle. The leader did a very good job. Obviously, casualties are going to be heavy if you're outnumbered 5-1. And the people got into the mountains and the hills, rather, and they used everything they could. They had big glasses of gas, and they threw it on the tanks, and a lot of them were burned to death. This is called boots on the ground war. That's what it is. And I'm done with that. I normally don't do this, but I wanted to remind you about some people. They turn against the people around them who are wrong, and some of you out there need to do that. That's what this lesson is right now. Some of you need to turn against what you've joined, and it may not be your fault. That Italian officer, he turned, he went back, he said, I don't like what I'm doing. I want to help you guys because you're obviously just everyday people. You're obviously not bothering anybody. Isn't this your town? And some of the other Italian men go, what are you doing? What are you doing? He said, what do you mean, what am I doing? Then the saddest part, of course, is when all of a sudden the people, their very own army is attacking them. It just so happens to be a small battalion, but they were still outnumbered because they tried to attack from another flank. So the captain, I forgot his name, of the entire army, one of the two generals there of the People's Army, because they got organized pretty quick. You got to give those people credit. They were pretty well organized very quickly, and they got a lot of weapons from the enemy, and these people were organized. This is a smart bunch of Yugoslavians. Also, they're very brave because they're outnumbered 5-1. But here comes their own army attacking them. Some of them are their own relatives. This happened in Spain, by the way, before World War II. The Germans convinced the Spanish to attack their own people. And some of the people who were the resistance army of Spain had to kill some of the young men who joined the Third Reich stuff. It's very sad. This is boots on the ground minion stuff that you don't have to join. Those Spanish people didn't have to join Hitler and attack their own people. Neither did the Yugoslavians. You find yourself in a position where you're being squeezed, you can get out of it. That's my lesson for today, right now. As we talk about the two groups of people who want to have a Sabbath day, big deal, and they want to have food as a big deal. We're going to move on from that. But the army, their own army came to attack them, and the leader did a very, very shrewd move. He told a small band of women and men, poorly clothed, poorly trained, he told them that he didn't tell them that, but that you're basically going to lead our own army away from us. That we're going to surround them and kill them. But he didn't tell them that they were going to die. That happens very often in war, where somebody will send a battalion as a come on so that you can surround them and so forth. It's a trap. That's exactly what they did. One of the generals of the Yugoslavian army, who was a foreign leader, told them, don't do it. It's not a wise strategy. But the leader of the Yugoslavian army said, we're very brave and we're going to go get them. So they surrounded them and they got them. But the people that dragged them away and into the valley and so forth, they all basically were wiped out easily. Because that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to wipe the people out. For some reason, they wanted to wipe their own people out, which happens quite often, unfortunately. The Muslims took over Egypt with the help of other Egyptian black people. Without the help of the black people that lived in Egypt, they would have not been able to slaughter the black people who ran Egypt. Okay? It happens in almost everybody. The Yugoslavians aren't the only ones. The people in the South didn't mind murdering the Union Army of Abraham Lincoln. They didn't mind murdering them. Because it was really murder. Because the Northern Army of our country here, the Union Army, they were simply doing the law. They were simply enacting the Constitution. And the Southerners said, we don't believe in basically in the Constitution the way you see it. Essentially, the Southerners are mentally retarded because it's quite clear that African people are people and you can't abuse them and use them. And Abraham Lincoln said, we're going to stop you. And they said, no, you're not. So Abraham Lincoln is basically enforcing the law. And the Southern people are rebels. I have movies where they try to paint Southerners as some sort of decent people. And to put it bluntly, only a jackass would believe that. Make excuses for what they're doing. Resisting arrest, which is what they're doing. They're not bad people. There's a lot of that that's unfortunately in American movies, and it's kind of sickening. But let's get back to the army here. So that's what happened. They surrounded their own army, by the way. Wow. And they started to kill them all. Then they said, stop, we're going to take prisoners. And a couple of people, I forgot how many, said, no way. We're taking these people out. They just killed some of our own family, and they killed their own family. It wasn't easy to stop a couple of these guys, and I don't blame them for being upset at all. Watching relatives kill other relatives and stuff for no reason. Why would they kill them? What's the purpose? They weren't bothering anybody. When the war started, they were eating dinner and a machine gun fire came over their houses from those Messerschmitts of the Germans. Right? Now the good news is that the people